average is not invited. Not if you're holding your company off-site in Las Vegas. We aren't on friendly terms with the bare minimum, and unenthusiastic is uninvited. Las Vegas's creative energy and world-class hospitality want to bring your company off-site to crazy new heights. That's why fear-based leadership is afraid of Vegas. And boring? Won't be there, but it will be watching the meeting recordings later. Plan for the extraordinary at vegasmeansbusiness.com.
This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV, it's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got Juanita Wheeler, and she is the CEO and head curator of TEDx Brisbane. And so today's talk is going to be all about TEDx talking, how to land a TEDx talk, how to prepare for it, improve your stage presence, and overall become an effective public speaker. And she's got a lot of wisdom and experience. I'm really happy to have her on. And so, Juanita, welcome.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, briefly introduce yourself, and we'll dive into the questions.
Well, thank you. I am a public speaking strategist, a speechwriter, and a presentation pitching and speaker coach. I've coached over 100 TEDx speakers, as well as executives, entrepreneurs, authors, researchers. My primary purpose is to help people who have great ideas to champion them in a way that does those ideas justice. I've got 3 master's degrees, 2 of which are in business, and I'm a global fellow with the Atlantic Fellows based out of Oxford University.
Wow, well, it's so wonderful. And so the first question I have for the audience is, what's the difference between a TEDx talk and a standard public speaking talk?
That's a really great question. I'm completely biased, and I think TED and TEDx are absolutely wonderful, but they are just one type of public speaking. There are so many different types of public speaking. And I often say to people when they say, I could never do public speaking, it would freak me out. I'm like, do you speak when you walk outside of your house to other people? Because if you are, then I don't know how to tell you this, but if you're speaking in public, then you're public speaking. It's just one form of it. And TED and TEDx is certainly one form of it. It's a great form. Generally speaking, you have to deliver your idea in a clear and compelling manner. It's got to be a new and novel idea, so not something that you've heard 26 times somewhere else. And you've got to get it into an absolutely pure and succinct 18 minutes or less. And really, to be honest, since COVID and since we were used to things, our attention spans shrunk a little. So really the goal is to sort of get it into 12 minutes or less, because people want that information short, sharp, with no waffle. We're busy people with lots to do in our lives. So TEDx, in essence, is about finding amazing ideas that have the potential to change everything in a community, in an industry, in the world, and get it into its shortest, purest 18 minutes or less. Comparatively, keynotes. So, for example, I work a lot with people who aren't looking to do a TEDx talk, or maybe that's on their dream wish list in a few years' time. But right now, they'd like to develop their signature keynote. They want to start going out in the speaking circuit. They want to be known for this one thing as part of growing their personal brand. Maybe they want to, in the next couple of years, release a book, and this is going to help them grow that audience. Or perhaps they're looking to take a step out from behind the company, their firm, their agency, the brand that they've been associated with, and really establish themselves as a personal brand. And so those keynotes, they can go for much longer. They can be 25 minutes. They can be 45 minutes. Sometimes they can be an hour. I don't necessarily think that's a great thing, but there's more room to play with. There's more room for personal narratives. There's more room for information. And generally speaking, the formats of keynotes can often be more motivational in nature, whereas at its heart, while TEDx Talks and TED Talks can motivate people, they're about the ideas themselves.
Mm. And so, which comes to the next question is, a lot of the audience, they'll tune into this episode recording and they want to know, how do I get a TEDx talk? What are the elements in crafting a pitch and succeeding?
I got to tell you, as soon as anybody hears that I'm involved with TEDx, that is the first question I get. How do I get one? And there are a couple of really important things to know. So first of all, there's a difference between TED and TEDx. Some people know it, some people don't. If you regard TED as, the mothership, it's based out of New York. There are a certain number of TED events each year that TED staff and the TED curatorial team there handpick those individuals to deliver those talks, and they're amazing. TEDx is kind of like the boots on the ground community version of TED. So TEDx operators, people who are licensees, are granted a license from TED. And so you have over 3,000 TEDx events that happen every year in different communities. We have to abide by the rules and guidelines of TED. So, for example, the 18 minutes or less format, but they're independently organized in local communities. So you can put speakers on your stage, that ideally come from that community or have an attachment to that community, but they're also about ideas that are important to that community at any given time. So when it comes to how do I get a gig? Well, if you're looking for TED, you can go and apply on the TED website. Obviously, that is a much smaller pool of speakers that are selected in any given year. And they're always looking themselves. It's not just through people who apply through the website. When you're talking about TEDx events, I tell people the first thing you need to know is, generally speaking, the curation is done in 2 or 3 different ways. So sometimes it's a tap on the shoulder. There is no way to apply for some TEDx events. It's probably about 50-50. It changes about people who will not accept applications. They have to find you. And ways to be found are things like getting some media coverage in your local community. If you are a university alumni, go and see if they can write a profile or a piece about the idea you have or the exciting work that you're doing. Make it as easy as possible for your local TEDx organizers to find out about your work you're doing. And then other TEDx's at the local level allow you to apply. So there will be an open call for applications for those TEDx events. So one of the things you should absolutely do if you're interested in this is you can go and get a free listing of all TEDx events. Please do not pay somebody to access a list, which I sometimes see, and it makes me quite cross. TED as an organization puts this information out for free. So you can just Google TEDx event listing, and it will take you to the TED website where there is a complete list of every TEDx event that has been approved and scheduled for this year. Just so you know, sometimes there's a delay between when someone applies to have their license renewed each year and when the event is scheduled. So if you don't see one in your community, just keep checking back or follow them on Facebook, get on their email list. It's a great way to know when the TEDx events in your local community are looking for speakers. And the third is kind of a mix of the two. So, for example, at TEDx Brisbane, you can't apply to speak at our event. We handpick all of our speakers, but we do run a 1-minute pitch competition every year where you can, if you have a ticket to our event, one of the perks of a ticket is you get to apply for this competition. People send in a video of their great idea, their TEDx-worthy idea in 1 minute, and we pick the finalists to get up on the stage on event day, step into the red circle, and deliver their 1-minute pitch. Wow. The really cool thing about that is it's a really great way to get on our radar, because I think at our last event, 2 of our speakers were previous 1-minute pitch finalists, and that's a recurring theme. Probably our most memorable version is that Dr. George Blair West, who is a psychiatrist here in Brisbane, he did a 1-minute pitch. We went out for the break afterwards. He basically got mobbed by people asking him more. His 1-minute pitch idea was about how to prevent divorce while you're still dating. And people 5 hours later at the bar was still out with notebooks asking questions. And so we asked him to come back and do a full talk the subsequent year. That was a huge success. It actually got picked up as a feature talk and showcased by the TED editorial team on TED.com. And then he got a book deal. It's had over 4 million views, but it all started with a 1-minute pitch. So we do a 1-minute pitch competition. Some events have a pitch night where you can go and they preserve 1 or 2 spots in their speaking lineup for people from the pitch competition. So there are lots of different ways that you can find a road towards giving a TEDx speech or a TEDx talk. The best way is to find out about the TEDx events in your local community and engage with them online, on social media, subscribe to their e-news, find out what's happening with them.
Yeah. And I love that because, the first half we were talking about specifically TED and TEDx, and these are very signature events, and, they're very high impact, the high visibility, high profile. And, a lot of the audience listening, they are thought leaders, they're influencers, and they want to incorporate public speaking into their persona, into their companies and businesses for various reasons. And so how does, like someone who's an influencer, for example, just like a writer or a blogger or like a podcaster, and they want to get the word out more, how do they get into public speaking? What is the first kind of baby steps into it?
It's a really good question. First of all, I think anybody who is an author or a thought leader or involved in any kind of thought championship or in any kind of business or entrepreneurship absolutely should be public speaking. It is one of the hands down best tools to either grow your business or to establish or consolidate your status as an expert in your given field. There's just nothing really that competes with it, because when somebody is organizing an event that isn't you, and they put you up on a stage, they are saying to their audience that, by the way, they've gone to all the trouble of dealing with and bringing together. You didn't have to worry about the marketing or the dietary requirements or any of that. Like, someone's done it for you. If you pick the right event, they'll be your target audience, which is magnificent. But what they're saying when they put you on the stage is, this person is an expert. They have absolute credibility and you should listen to them. And that does absolutely wonderful things for, championing your idea, for accelerating your impact, for selling more books, making more revenue, suddenly becoming a name that people might find desirable, for writing, for being a columnist, for getting on their board. All of these are good things. In terms of how you start, it really depends on where you are at now. So every human is different. Every public speaker is different. So there will be people out there who will not be public speaking because they have a fear of it, or they are experiencing the imposter phenomena. So, the way that I start working with those people is totally different to somebody who's maybe done a few speaking gigs and they just need to level up. But the things, if you were really starting, the first thing I would say is understand your strategic objective. You should never, ever get up and do a speaking gig if you don't know why you're there. So I find that a lot with the speakers that'll come to me. Sometimes I'll have somebody say, I've been speaking for 3 to 10 years. And I'm like, great, tell me how you pick which gigs you speak at. And the most common answer is when they invite me. Like, okay, this is a real problem. Let's stop that right now. Because they're speaking to audiences that aren't their ideal target audience and aren't going to. And I'm like, what is your strategic objective in speaking at this event? And they have no idea. So, you need to sit down and go, let's say you are going to write a book, or let's say you want to get a book written. And so you want to be attractive to publishers, or you're going to self-publish and you want to start getting your personal brand out there. So when your book comes out, people buy it. Then one of the things that would be great is, okay, if I'm attracting publishers, where are publishers? What events are they going to? Where would I get myself in front of them? Write down those events. They should be on your speaking gig wish list. And then say, that's my target audience. That's who I need to get in front. This is where they'll be this year. How do I get to speak at those events? And then what is my strategic objective? Your strategic objective might be to get a book deal. Let's just, keep it simple. then okay, I know what my objective is. I know they're going to be there. I'm going to find out exactly how I get myself a spot on that stage. And then I'm going to work out, what am I going to talk about that is going to make me so attractive that someone is going to come up to me afterwards and say, we should talk. Let's get a coffee. Or maybe it's in 6 months when somebody suggests to them, we really should have, it would be great if we had a non-fiction book about XYZ. It's a hot topic in the media. And someone can say, oh, I was at the Adelaide Writers Festival, 6 months ago, and I saw this person. I think they'd be perfect. So what is going to make you stand out? What is your idea? And when you work out what your idea is that you want to be known for, work out how to get it into 12 words or less. Because, Einstein says, if you can't explain your idea to an 8-year-old, you don't understand it. And it's very similar. If you have a great idea, you need to be able to articulate it in 12 words or less, because someone can remember that. Someone can remember that, and someone can explain it to somebody else if they missed hearing you speak. And you just go and say, hey, I just saw this amazing person speak. What did they speak about? If you've done your job correctly, what the next words that come out of their mouth will be your 12 words or less, which will explain your idea.
Interesting. And so I've kind of divided it up into, pre-speech, like the actual preparation. There's ways of practicing, but the actual, and you help, like I said, you've coached over 100 speakers on making a speech memorable, structuring a compelling speech. So just nuts and bolts, very broad strokes. How can one make their speech memorable and structure a compelling speech?
This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Okay, that's a really long question, and it's different for everything. But I think there are some really the core basics is a lot of people, and I found this a lot when I started coming into the industry, or when I have still have clients come to me and they're saying, oh, like They think it's some kind of dodge or hustle. They're looking to find a way to trick the audience into feeling engaged. They want to know, what's the trick? What's the way to make them? Is there something I can do with my hands or my vocal gestures? I'm like, can we leave that, please, in grade 12 speech and drama or theatre club? Let's not try and dodge or hustle people with stage theatrics. What the best way to have an audience be engaged and to remember you are a few things. First of all, make sure you're speaking to the right audience. If I was talking on aeronautics and I went and spoke to a parenting conference for mums and dads, that's ridiculous. They're not going to necessarily be the slightest bit interested, and they're certainly not going to say yes to whatever it is I'm trying to sell or promote or get them to do. So make sure you're speaking to the right audience is the first one, because if you're not speaking to the right audience, it doesn't matter how great your speech is, they will not be engaged. The second thing is to make sure that you have written this speech for them. You want somebody in the audience, after you've spoken our first 2 or 3 sentences, to have their ears prick up and go, oh my gosh, she's talking about me. Because you've made it clear in your opening, here's this problem. Here's the problem with the status quo. Here's the situation you might be experiencing. It's bad. That's Act 1. Explain the status quo problem that currently exists. Act 2 is tell them about your amazing idea, product, service, innovation, research that is going to make all of this better. And then Act 3 is simply, if you believe me and take the action I've asked you to, say yes. This is the happily ever after. But if you want people to be truly engaged in that very first section where you are describing what the problem is with the status quo, they'll prick their ears up and go, oh my gosh, that's me. So for example, if we were talking, and I might say, if I was talking to a whole group of entrepreneurs that I thought were aspiring public speakers, but fear was holding them back, my opening would be something along the lines of, public speaking is one of the most powerful tools on the planet to help you grow your business. And every entrepreneur needs to know how to do it because they can. And then people will go, oh my gosh, that's me. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm not speaking because XYZ.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like I said, we just wanted broad strokes because, we only have 30 minutes and, these nuances you need a professional and someone to help you with. So let's talk about like during the speech, and there's obviously, well polished public speakers, with years, decades of experience, they practice their public speaking. We'll talk about that. Just in general, here's some of the common things that happen during it. Is like you practice, you prepared, and then I feel like every time I go out there, there's always something in the back of my mind, and it's like either the like computer malfunctions or there's no teleprompter. So what are your thoughts on, like, for example, I've seen speeches where the speaker has just like their notes on their cell phone and they just kind of hold it just in case, or just like forgetting what to say, or just like they walk out and they just basically blank out. What are your tips and tricks for handling that situation?
Okay, this is complex, but let's just start. First of all, as a general rule, that shouldn't happen. If you have done the work, if you have put in the time and prepared, that should not happen. The people I know that happens to, and it doesn't matter, typically there's like one person every year at a TEDx event that will have a freak out moment, and I'll be talking to them through a bathroom stall door, encouraging them to get to the stage. And it does not matter if they've only public spoken once before or never before, or whether this is their 2000th talk. It's not about experience. It's about how much effort you put in. So if you are happy to give a mediocre talk, then be prepared to put in a mediocre effort. But if you want to give a great talk, then you're going to have to put in a great amount of effort. If you want to give it an exemplary, unforgettable talk, then you need to put in an exemplary amount of effort. So because the people who freak out, the one thing they consistently tell me, whether it's keynotes, TEDx, whatever, is I should have rehearsed more. I should have put in the work. So in answer to that, yes, it can happen, but it should be exceedingly rare, because if you put in the work, everybody who has that moment, typically they'll say to me afterwards, I didn't put in enough work. And I'm like, yeah, but they'll learn and they won't do it the next time. Some people don't learn and they do the same thing over and over. And then they say, I can't memorize talks, or I just have stage fright. I'm like, no, you just didn't do the work. Let's just be full and frank and honest for a second. You just didn't do the work. So put in the work. So with our TEDx speakers, for example, we start 5 months out and there's at least 100 hours worth of work into, and the same thing for people I work with who are doing keynotes. That's the expectation. If this is a game-changing presentation, whether it's in a boardroom or a TEDx stage, if this has the potential to change the trajectory of your career or your personal brand or your company, then, anything less than 100 hours of work to do it is a bit of a mockery. So put in the work and you have direct control over the likelihood of that happening. Having said that, in the event that it happens, then you should always have what we refer to as a dead air joke. So I had a client. She was really panicked because she only got advised last minute that she was going to be able to give this presentation to very senior levels of people in the law enforcement industry in Australia. And she's like, I'm going to forget something. I'm like, great, here is our dead air joke. So, for her it was, oh my gosh, this was so much easier when I was rehearsing in the shower. And a couple of things happened. First of all, people who were quite stoic and serious all had a giggle. They all had empathy for her because so many people, experts suggested as many as 70 or 80% of people have some form of glossophobia, which is a fear of public speaking. So she had everybody on board with her. It gave her time while they were having a laugh to regroup, to have a sip of water, to consult her notes to the side of the stage or remember what her next line was and go with it. So you should always have a dead air joke, and it always should have a little bit of funny in it so people can, regroup with you. In terms of notes, so for TEDx, some TEDx's allow notes, we don't. We find if you have notes, and I'm the same with my keynote speakers that I train, if you have notes, you'll use them. So don't. I myself, if it's over 18 minutes or over 20 minutes, a presentation, have a small selection of just words that will remind you, or better yet, have a slide. And when you get to this slide with this image on it, there's no words on it, but that picture is where I tell this anecdote. So there are things you can do like that. But if you don't use your phone. Please don't use your phone. Don't ever use your phone. Don't use your phone. Because it just looks bad. But if you do have notes, make them small. Please don't ever stand. If you can get out from behind a lectern, never stand and present from a lectern. A lectern is a barrier that is between you and the audience. That might have worked like in the 80s and 90s where people wanted power dynamics. But we have social media now. People want authenticity. People get insights into the behind the scenes of people's lives now. We want to feel connected with people. So why on earth would you immediately put a physical barrier between you and the audience? Just don't do it. Get a roving mic. Just tell them in advance, hi, I'm coming. I don't care if every other person is standing behind a lectern with a fixed mic. I need this. So please, I'll bring you a coffee in the morning, which I do, but please, I need a roving mic with a mic pack and I need to be able to move around. You can keep the lectern on the stage. I'm not making you move it, but I will not be standing behind it. I'm also 4'10", so they just don't work for me. But even if you're a giant, don't stand behind a lectern. So yes, have a dead air joke. Whether or not you're going to forget things on the moment on the stage is 100% up to you. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. How much performance and rehearsal you put in beforehand is entirely in your control. The other really important thing to understand, and it would be remiss of me not to say, is memorizing and rehearsing are two entirely different things. They are not the same. People who forget and have blank moments on stage, it's usually because, in part, they either didn't do the work or they think these two things are the same. They are not. Memorizing is where you know all the lines. It's like a theatre actor knowing the lines of a script and being able to say them rote. You'll sound like a robot, but you know them. And then when that's done, that's when you start rehearsing. It's, saying you memorized it and you're calling that rehearsing, that's akin to seeing somebody step onto a stage for a musical or theatre production and they've memorized the lines but never had a rehearsal. Like it would be bad. They're two very different things. For our TEDx speakers, we require them to show us 6 weeks out at a green light session that it's fully memorized. They can sound like a robot. We don't care because we know they then have 6 weeks to put in the humanity, the character, the personality, the authenticity. But you can't do that and focus on a conversation with the audience if in those last weeks, or heaven forbid on the day on stage, your brain is thinking about what is my next line rather than thinking about how am I engaging authentically with this audience. So it's bad. And if you're somebody who gets stage fright, first of all, work out what works for you to calm you beforehand. There is no one fix. Anyone who tells you that there's one fix doesn't know what they're talking about. So I've had people at backstage over the years at TEDx's. I've seen people on mini tramps. I've seen people running up and down stairwells to get their, nerves out. I've seen mature, very refined white ladies with, headphones, and I just walk past, they're blaring Killing in the Name Of. I'm like, okay, I wouldn't have picked that, but whatever works. I've seen people listening to memorizations. They've recorded their talks, which you should do. It's a great way to memorize your talk, listening to the last second. And then we've got people who are like, grab one of our volunteers and say, talk to me about your dating life or what you're doing on the weekend or anything but this talk. I just need to pretend it's not happening until the moment I get on stage. everything that calms people before a talk is entirely different based on them being a unique human. Find what works for you. And in the lead up, if you're still freaking out about people looking at you, then the thing I make my TEDx speakers and my coaching clients do, and I make them, and they don't necessarily love me at the beginning, but they love me on event day when it's worked. I tell them to grab a hula hoop, like $10 down at the store, stick it in their local park or down at the beach, somewhere where people are going to be walking dogs in the morning, and go and stand in it and recite your talk. And yes, they'll look. And yes, they'll stare. And guess what? Suck it up and get used to it. And you can make a little sign there that says rehearsing my TEDx talk or rehearsing my keynote speech. And before you know it, people will be walking past. I love when people say, oh yeah, I'm starting to know the dog walkers, and they're telling me I'm getting better. I'm like, excellent. But you just have to not be freaked out by that. And if you think that you will be, for goodness sake, don't wait till event day to have that confirmed. Like, write it down and go, cool, what are the strategies we can employ to make sure that does not happen?
Yeah. Yeah, just remind me, I had a good friend in stand-up comedy, and he lived in Los Angeles, and to prepare for his routines, he would actually go down during the wee hour, when there was like all this traffic, and he would go down Rodeo Drive in his pajamas, and he would recite his comedy skit, and just absolutely ridiculous. He'd dress up in a Halloween costume when it wasn't even Halloween, just to get over that and just kind of get over that social pressure. So
and it works. I mean, the thing is, it works. People who are really self-conscious, and sometimes, and a lot of people feel bad about it. It's like a failing of theirs, particularly women. And I will say, I'm sorry, you've been told your entire life, be smaller, don't be bossy, be quieter, don't take up space. Everything socially has told you to do the opposite of stand up on a stage, own your space, and own your awesome, and say, I'm really brilliant at this. Please listen to me. That is nothing. You have been discouraged, from doing that from your very first breath. And certain cultures even more so. So, this is not a failing or a lacking on your part. This is, societally imposed norms. What we're going to do is say, nope, not today. Me and my hula hoop are going to go to the beach or the dog park, and I'm just going to do this till I no longer care if somebody whistles at me or boos or claps, even though that's lovely too, but I'm not going to get distracted. I'm going to focus on my message, because honestly, at the end of the day, if you think that there is one person who will benefit from your knowledge, your wisdom, your skills, your experience, the things you have learned and amassed in your career, then you should be talking about it. So get out there and do it, and don't let, the fact that you've been told you're no good at it, or you can't do it, or let that self-doubt tell you you're going to fail. No, stop that. Get out there and just start. You can do it. It's like plumbing. It's a skill. If I wanted to learn how to plumb my house, I totally don't. I would find the best expert plumber I could to teach me. And then I would practice and practice and practice, and I would work out what I was doing wrong, and I would get expert help, and then I would do it better, and I would learn more, and I would rehearse until I was really, really good at it. And I say this as somebody who public speaking did not come naturally to me. I am a screaming introvert, but I worked out that if I wanted my ideas heard, if I wanted to be able to champion them in a compelling way, then I was going to have to suck it up, learn how to do it really well based on neuroscience and neuroeconomics and behavioral psychology about decision making, and getting people to listen to you and say yes. So it is a skill, and you can learn it.
I love that. And how can people contact you and follow you and find you and reach out to you?
Probably the two best ways are, if you're interested in a few free tools, then on my website at fullandfrank.com/tools, there are a couple of free guides that are really very good. One is how to get started in public speaking, and another is how to grow your business with public speaking. And if you're looking to reach out and ask me about anything else, you can find me on LinkedIn at Juanita Wheeler, Juanita Wheeler.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And I really enjoyed this conversation.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. It was lovely being here.